What do the following places have in common? The Petrified Forest in Arizona, the La Brea Tar Pits in downtown Los Angeles, Dinosaur National Monument in Colorado, and this quarry in Wyoming. All these places are sites where fossils have been unearthed and studied. What exactly are fossils? What are some of the different kinds of fossils? How are fossils formed? And why are they important? During the next few minutes, we're going to answer these questions and others as we explore the fascinating topic of fossils. Chances are you've seen a fossil, such as an imprint of a shell. Perhaps you've seen a dinosaur skeleton in a museum. Or maybe you've seen a piece of petrified wood. These are all examples of fossils. You compare. How are these fossilized dinosaur footprints different from these recent handprints? The dinosaur footprints are millions of years old. Technically speaking, the hand imprints are not fossils because they were made recently. Fossils are the ancient remains or traces of once living things. A fossil can be the imprint of a shell, a piece of bone, the remains of an ancient tree, or a track left by an animal. Let's take a look at why fossils are important. No one has ever seen a dinosaur, but we know that these giants once roamed Earth. How do we know? We know dinosaurs once existed from the evidence they left behind in the form of fossils. The bones here in Dinosaur National Monument provide evidence on how many different kinds of dinosaurs once lived here. Paleontologists are scientists who study fossils and ancient life forms. Paleontology is the scientific study of fossils and ancient life. Fossils not only tell us when and where plants and animals lived, but how they lived. Because fossils teach us so much about the past, they're sometimes referred to as windows to the past. Fossils are relatively uncommon, and it's even more uncommon to find a complete fossil of an entire living thing. Why? Well, first, in order for a fossil to form, the body of a dead plant or animal must be protected from scavengers as well as from decay. You predict. What will happen to this banana peel if it's left on the shelf for several days? As you can see, it turns brown and mushy and begins to decay. A similar process occurs to plants and animals when they die, making it difficult to form a fossil. One key to fossil formation is quick burial by sediments. Quite often, when a living thing dies and drops to the bottom of an ocean or a lake, sediments could rapidly cover it. Rapid burial prevents the living thing from being eaten and protects it from decay. Fossils are commonly found in sedimentary rocks, which are made up of small particles of rock, shell, sand, clay, or mud. Living things also have a better chance of being preserved if they have hard parts, such as teeth, bones, or shells. Hard parts are less likely to be eaten, and they decay more slowly. Therefore, they're more likely to form fossils. Fossils must also be left undisturbed for very long periods of time in order to form. This high, dry desert was once a vast floodplain crossed by many streams. Large pine-like trees grew along the headwaters of the streams 225 million years ago. These rock-like trees in Petrified Forest National Park were preserved in a process called petrification after they were washed into streams and buried by sediments. Petrification is the process by which cells in once living things are replaced by minerals found in surrounding water. In this process, preserved parts literally turn to stone. Preservation is so complete in this log that you can even see annual growth rings. Petrification not only preserves wood, but also other materials such as shells and bones. Fossils are often categorized based on how they were formed and what's preserved. An impression, or imprint, is a type of fossil left by the mark of a living thing. You decide. How do you think these dinosaur tracks were formed? The dinosaur tracks seen here are foot imprints left by a dinosaur that walked through the wet mud. Over time, the mud hardened into the rock we see here today. If a plant or animal is buried by sediments, two types of fossils may be formed, a mold and a cast. Over time, as a buried organism decays, a hollow area in the shape of the organism is left in the sediment. This hollow area in the shape of the organism is called a mold. This fossil of a fish found in Wyoming is one part of the mold left by the bony skeleton. Sometimes the empty space in a mold is filled by dissolved minerals and sediments. When this material hardens, a cast is formed. A cast is a copy of the original shape of the organism. This fossilized two-shelled organism, called a brachiopod, is a cast and has the same form as the original brachiopod. Some processes preserve the remains of organisms with amazingly little change. For example, the La Brea tar pits in downtown Los Angeles have provided paleontologists with the fascinating preserved remains of prehistoric animals. Animals that became stuck in the gooey tar pits died, and their bodies sank. Their flesh decayed, while their bones were preserved in the tar surrounding them. Living things can also be preserved in a material called amber. Amber is the hardened resin or sap produced by trees. Insects trapped in amber are perfectly preserved, enabling paleontologists to view a complete organism that is thousands of years old. In some cases, living things are preserved through freezing. For example, Extinct woolly mammoths, thousands of years old, have been discovered frozen in large blocks of ice. You may not realize it, but we use fossils every day. You decide. What substances are used to heat homes, produce electricity, and fuel cars? Oil, coal, and gas are used in these processes. These materials are often referred to as fossil fuels. They're referred to as fossil fuels because they're made from the ancient remains of plants and animals that lived hundreds of millions of years ago. While fossil fuels have served many useful purposes, they're now linked to the serious issue of global warming. Cement is another important substance derived from fossils. Cement is used in making concrete, which is used in making sidewalks, roads, bridges, and buildings. Cement is derived from a specific type of rock called limestone. Limestone was formed from the remains of dead marine organisms, which lived in ancient seas. These are just a couple of examples of how fossils play a role in our everyday lives. During the past few minutes, we've explored the fascinating topic of fossils. We discussed the importance of fossils in helping paleontologists understand when, where, and how ancient life forms lived. The basic requirements for fossil formation were highlighted. Some of the specific types of fossil preservation were discussed, including petrification, imprints, molds, casts, freezing, amber fossilization, and preservation in tar pits. Last, we discussed some of the everyday ways that we use fossils. So, the next time you see the skeleton of a dinosaur, admire a beautiful fossil, or use fossil fuel, think about some of the things that we've discussed during the past few minutes. You just might think about fossils a little differently. Fill in the correct word to complete the sentence. Good luck, and let's get started. Number 1. Are the ancient remains of once living things? Number 2. Is the scientific study of fossils and ancient life? Number 3. A key to fossil formation is quick by sediments. Number 4. These logs were preserved by the process of And number 5. A fossil is a copy of the original shape of an organism.